What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie A Complete Unknown. Here's a quick synopsis. In the early 1960s, a young Bob Dylan navigates fame, his music career, and his own artistic ambitions. The film stars Timothee Chalamet, Edward Norton, Monica Barbaro, Elle Fanning, and Boyd Holbrook. Standout performances. Timothee Chalamet playing Bob Dylan is without a doubt the biggest risk he has taken so far as an actor. Playing a public figure is always hard, but playing one that has a super well-known persona is something different because it's impossible to please everyone. Chalamet, however, comes close. He just has that indescribable movie star thing that makes you in awe of him. And that's what makes him the perfect Bob Dylan, because he's playing a man that many people are in awe of and inspired by. He also proves himself to be a more than capable singer. Also, it's just hard to play someone who's supposed to come off as the coolest person in the world, and Chalamet makes it look effortless. With his last 3 movies, Wonka, Dune Part 2, and now A Complete Unknown, Timothee Chalamet has cemented himself as an A-level movie star. He's become, when this guy stars in a movie, it becomes a big deal type of actor, whereas before he would be in movies like Beautiful Boy or Bones and all, and while those movies are good, they weren't seen or discussed heavily. He's becoming the type of big name that if he made those movies right now, they would be bigger hits. The comparisons to Leonardo DiCaprio are going away. They are very different kinds of leading men, but the biggest similarity is Chalamet, like Leo, is director driven, working with the likes of Paul King, Denis Villeneuve, and James Mangold. And because he's a big name, every great director wants to work with him, and I expect Chalamet to continue to take advantage of that fact. Chalamet's next film is Marty Supreme from Josh Safdie. It's his first movie as sole director without his brother Benny, and I'm curious to see if he maintains that anxiety-inducing tone without his brother. Also in A Complete Unknown is Edward Norton, an actor who, like Chalamet, had a breakout year. His was in 1996, where Norton starred in Primal Fear. The big reveal is still viewed as one of the best twists of all time, and The People vs. Larry Flint, where he plays the straight man to Woody Harrelson's Flint. He got an Oscar nomination for Primal Fear. Chalamet's breakout was in 2017 with Call Me By Your Name and Lady Bird, and Chalamet was nominated for an Oscar for Call Me By Your Name. The rise for both was immediate. Once they became known, they were both viewed as good actors, and I know when it comes to Edward Norton, for many, it's all about his early work. Rounders, one of the best movies about gambling. It's weird that at the time this movie was not popular. Norton was coming off of Primal Fear and Matt Damon off of Good Will Hunting. Norton is superb as Worm. I recently watched American History X for the first time. It's one of the most captivating movies I've ever seen, and Norton gives one of the most energized performances. He's simply undeniable in the film, and I would have given him an Oscar for it. Fight Club has become a movie where it's all about Brad Pitt and Helena Bonham Carter. I love Norton in this movie, and that gets me to my favorite Edward Norton film, 25th Hour, where he plays Monty, a man getting his life together before he's sent to prison. In the early days, Norton, like Chalamet, was working with the very best directors, David Fincher, Milos Forman, and Spike Lee. Edward Norton is still a great actor. Just watch Birdman and the Knives Out sequel Glass Onion. He's just become more of a supporting actor and less of a leading man. It's my opinion he's done his best work this past decade as part of Wes Anderson's ensemble. Let's talk about his role in A Complete Unknown. Norton plays folk singer Pete Seeger, who has made it his life's goal to make folk music a genre as big as rock, and in the film puts all of that pressure on Dylan, who he sees as the key to moving the music forward. The best way to describe him is he's a square, which is an archetype Norton can play really well, and did so in the films Death to Smoochie as a children's television personality, personality, and Moonrise Kingdom as a Boy Scout master. Seeger is a wholesome guy who plays by societal rules and someone who is looking to give audiences exactly what they want, which is in opposition to what Dylan is attempting to do. One of the big clashes of this movie is that I felt during it that Seeger wanted to be viewed as more of a mentor, and Bob Dylan wasn't really viewing him as that. The portrayal of these well-known figures is going to divide audiences. Some will be on the side of Seeger in his aw shucks attitude and be against Dylan with his holier-than-thou attitude about his art. For the record, I'm on Team Dylan, who is trying to move an art form forward, who is not resting on his laurels and just wants to be creative. Monica Barbaro, who was in Top Gun Maverick, plays folk singer Joan Baez, who has a love-hate relationship with Dylan. She's in awe of his talent, but later on in the relationship sees him as a bit selfish and all about his own music. The chemistry between her and Chalamet is palpable, and like him, she's playing a well-known musician who many have a history with. She also just nails the singing performances. She's very good in the film, and I just wish they gave her more to do at the end of it. I just felt like what happened in their relationship was a bit lost by the end of the film. Barbaro is being viewed as a breakout star for this movie, and rightfully so. Actress Elle Fanning over the last few years has done tremendous work on television with The Great, one of the funniest shows I've ever seen, and the miniseries The Girl from Plainview. I for one don't think Elle's gotten enough credit for her film career. My favorite of her roles include Aurora in Maleficent. It's the one live-action reimagining of an animated film that's actually a new look at the story. Fanning more than holds her own against Angelina Jolie. In 20th Century Woman, she plays Julie, a rebellious teen. This, for me, is the best performance of her career so far, and in The Beguiled, she plays Alicia. There's a portion of the movie she completely takes over, which is saying a lot in a film that also includes Nicole Kidman, Colin Farrell, and Kirsten Dunst. In A Complete Unknown, Fanning plays Sylvie, who is in a bit of an on-again, off-again relationship with Bob Dylan. Her problem with him is he doesn't want to reveal anything about his past, and she has also become jealous of his chemistry with Baez. And finally, you have actor Boyd Holbrook playing Johnny Cash. Holbrook had a great 2024 with this movie and The Bike Riders. This is Holbrook's third film with director James Mangold after Logan and Indiana Jones and The Dial of Destiny. Watching the movie, I had this thought, that while Norton Seeger is the angel on Dylan's shoulder trying to get him to do the right thing, Holbrook's Cash is the devil trying to get him to take risk. The director and co-writer of A Complete Unknown is James Mangold, who has made many movies in many genres, including a cop thriller in Copland, which has the best performance from Sylvester Stallone, a western in 3:10 to Yuma. This is the movie of his that not enough people talk about. Ben Foster is scary good in it. A superhero movie in Logan. I know it's no longer the last Hugh Jackman film as Wolverine, but it's still special. A sports film in Ford v Ferrari. Christian Bale and Katrina Balfe should have been nominated for Oscars for their work in this film, and an adventure film with Indiana Jones and The Dial of Destiny, which might not hit the heights of the original films, but is still very good. The genre I now believe James Mangold is best at is without a doubt the musical biopic. His first was Walk the Line, which will turn 20 years old in November. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and there's some similarities between Walk the Line and A Complete Unknown. And I'm not even talking about the fact that both films have Johnny Cash in them. Mangold in Walk the Line was able to illustrate how strong the connection between Joaquin Phoenix's Cash and Reese Witherspoon's June Carter was on stage when they were singing together, and he did it again with Dylan and Baez in A Complete Unknown, and he showed us that the other women in these men's lives felt like they could not compare. In Walk the Line, Cash's first wife, Vivian, wants nothing to do with Carter. There's the great scene where he drives her mad trying to put up a picture of Carter in their home. And in A Complete Unknown, Fanning Sylvie has a hard time watching Dylan sing with Baez. Another similarity is the men, Dylan and Cash, don't even understand why it bothers their significant others. They are clueless and, one might say, self-involved, and that's something I admire about Mangold. He's not just making these movies to show how much he worships these musicians. He's showing them flaws and all. There's going to be a lot of people walking out of this movie saying to themselves, wow, Bob Dylan, not the greatest guy in the world. It's easy to make a movie where it just shows that Bob Dylan is a musical genius. It's harder to make a movie that makes him feel like a real human being, and that's what this movie accomplishes. Mangold, to me, is now the king of making the musical biopic. And I know there's all this talk that his next film is going to be a Star Wars movie. I don't know if I want that for James Mangold. What I want for him is more recognition. Like, I really do believe this is one of the best directors working today. He has made some of my all-time favorite films. I will watch Walk the Line for the rest of my life, at least once or twice a year. That's how great that movie is. And even when I watch it, I'm surprised how great I think that movie is after I watch it. I'm like, yes, I thought this was really good. It's even better than I imagined. And it's a movie I've seen over 10 times in my life. He picked the absolute perfect people to play these iconic musicians. First with Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash, and then again with Timothee Chalamet as Bob Dylan. Two actors who can sing really well. Box office. So far, A Complete Unknown has made over $41 million at the box office. It's a very solid number, and its success and other film successes are why these musical biopics are not going away. We have a Michael Jackson biopic coming. We have a Bruce Springsteen biopic coming. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm all for it. I like these movies, and I especially like these movies when they become more than just the greatest hits. I also just think this genre of movies gets lumped in together. Like, this movie is nothing like Rocket Man. They are not the same type of film. Yes, one movie is about Elton John, one movie is about Bob Dylan. Watch those two movies back to back. They could not be any different, and I, for one, think A Complete Unknown is a lot better than Rocket Man. That's just my opinion. I know others have different ones. And I can't be the only one who feels this way, that musical biopics are just way better than actual biopics about historical figures. Those are the ones that are bland and boring. I mean, these ones have well-known songs. Actors are really passionate about making it. I mean, Timothee Chalamet put years into his life to be able to sing like Bob Dylan. That's something that I'm interested in seeing on screen. And I really do believe that these musical biopics usually always come down to who directed them. That's why I'm excited about the Bruce Springsteen film starring Jeremy Allen White. It's going to be directed by Scott Cooper, who I believe is a vastly underrated filmmaker. And the Michael Jackson biopic could go either way because it's directed by Antoine Fuqua, who is a 50-50 director. I mean, sometimes he makes a really great film, sometimes he doesn't. Oscar chances. I believe right now Best Actor is between Timothée Chalamet, Adrien Brody for The Brutalist, and Ralph Fiennes for Conclave. If Chalamet wins, he would be the youngest winner of the award, surpassing Brody, who was 29 years old when he won for The Pianist. Is there a world where this movie also wins Best Picture? I don't think so. I do think Edward Norton is getting nominated, and Monica Barbaro has a chance to get nominated as well. And the nomination I want to see the most is James Mangold for Best Director. It's insane to me he's never been nominated in that category. I mean, this guy is just really good at making whatever kind of movie he's making. Also, so many people and critics said that a biopic about Bob Dylan could not be done. Well, it was done, and it was brilliantly done. I don't think Mangold should win the award. That honor should go to Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2, but I want to see James Mangold get get a nomination for Best Director. I personally would not be upset if this movie ended up winning Best Picture. I think it's better than a lot of films that have won Best Picture over the years. I think it is one of the best musical biopics. Overall, A Complete Unknown exceeded my sky-high expectations. For me, it's about the beginning of an artistic career and how it evolves over time. My favorite scene of the movie is when Bob Dylan, on stage with Joan Baez, refuses to sing an old song. Yes, it would be easy for Dylan to give the people what they want, but this entire movie is about Dylan challenging that for the sake of his art. I think in modern times, we all think it's way harder to be famous now than it was back then because of the internet, because of the paparazzi, but it wasn't easy being fame even during the 1960s. I mean, this man, Bob Dylan, was not asking for that kind of attention. He was just trying to make really good music. It should be noted that Bob Dylan has been rewarded for being a contrarian. Dylan going electric was an example of a young man who broke convention and was rewarded for it. That's why, while I understand some people walking out of this movie and going, wow, Bob Dylan, not a great guy, I also kind of look at this movie as kind of a hero's journey about someone who stayed true to himself and did not go down the easy path for his art. Look, I'm not the biggest Bob Dylan fan of all time. I enjoy the music, but man, after watching this movie, I really admire the artist that he was and still is. He wasn't a sellout. He wasn't into the fame. He wasn't super into the money. He was about the music, and he just wanted to quietly go along and make the songs that he was making. He didn't want everyone to know his life. Yes, I think you could watch this movie and go, maybe he should have let the people closest to him more into his life, but I understand his viewpoint. And the brilliance of the movie is that you can also understand the viewpoint of Pete Seeger. I mean, he's looking at this guy who could be the savior of this genre of music that he loves so much. I mean, he thinks that folk music is going to go to the next level because of Bob Dylan, and then by the end of the movie, he views what Bob Dylan did as a rejection of the music that he loves. This movie has received a lot of acclaim. It has also received some criticism, and I think the criticism that I don't understand the most is this idea that this is just a musical biopic full of tropes that you see in the genre from time to time. I don't see that. I see this movie going for something very different. Again, this isn't the greatest hits. This isn't how Bob Dylan came up with all of his songs. This isn't a love story. I think at the end of the day, this is a guy who wants total and complete control of who he is as a human being and his career, and how he fights against the people trying to control his career, like the Pete Seegers of the world, like his own label, like his own fans even. I know going into this movie, there were many movie fans worried about this one, because this is Timothee Chalamet playing the iconic Bob Dylan. This could go completely off of the rails. I never had that feeling because of James Mangold's involvement. I just really do believe this is one of our best directors, and because of his success with Johnny Cash and Walk the Line, I knew he would nail the Bob Dylan movie. I was also really curious to see Edward Norton as Pete Seeger, because Christian Bale and then Benedict Cumberbatch were once attached to the role. But then you watch it and you realize Edward Norton really was the perfect choice to play that guy. This is a huge victory for everyone involved, but the biggest victor is going to end up being Timothee Chalamet. Again, all of the best directors are going to want to work with him, and now all the eyeballs are on him. He is making the right choices. He's making the right kinds of films. He's taking the right chances, and most importantly, he is giving great performances on screen. I mean, two of the very best of 2024 with Dune Part 2 and A Complete Unknown. And if he doesn't win an Oscar for this, there will be one in his future, no doubt. The last thing I'll say about Bob Dylan in this movie is I think he was way ahead of his time in that he was trying to maintain control of his own image. I mean, that's all celebrities do nowadays, is they control control what we know about him. But back then there were very few people doing that, but Bob Dylan was. Bob Dylan was the one controlling everything that was going on with Bob Dylan. The music, the persona, what people knew about him. He was in control. And when people tried to take control from him, he went against them. And was still uber successful and more interesting than most celebrities are. Face it, we love the fact that there are more questions than answers when it comes to Bob Dylan, and this movie, A Complete Unknown, perfectly encapsulates that. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I highly recommend you check out A Complete Unknown. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, starring Lily Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, and Bill Skarsgård. So tune into that, and please rate, review, and subscribe.